So I've been doing boxing for 14 years now, and on my journey I've made so many mistakes that I could have avoided and be a much better fighter by now. In this video I will share with you things about boxing that I wish I knew earlier. If you're new here, my name is Andriy Khotin and I'm a former amateur boxer and active coach from Ukraine. On this channel we help boxers level up their game. And the first thing that will help you develop your skills much faster is learning everything with simple progressions. So, before you can run, you learn how to walk. Before you can walk, you learn how to crawl, and the same principle applies to boxing. Most of the skills in boxing are very complicated and require a very good coordination. That's why some advanced skills may be very confusing when you try them for the first time. But you can break them down in simple progressions. And let's take the check hook for example. That's when you throw the hook, you fade away, make your opponent miss, and counter him at the same time. So to learn then you can try using the frontal stance. For example, this square stance when you're facing your opponent like this instead of your fighting stance. So you get in your frontal stance, then you practice just taking steps to the sides. Then you start rotating your hips, heels and shoulders. Then you do that in your fighting stance. Then you start pivoting your back foot to the starting position. And then finally you start adding punches and you got it. You learned the check hook with 5 simple steps. So break down complicated moves in simple progressions and learn much faster. And our second tip is that the flow and rhythm is much more important than punching. So when you first start boxing, you are very excited about hitting, about punching, about feeling your power. But what is more important is how you set that all up. Because your footwork, your head movement is where you start. Because when the fight starts, you don't throw punches while you're staying in your corner. You have to get close, you start moving your head, and only then, to that rhythm, you should start punching. And once you master that, you will be a way more dangerous and better fighter. So the next tip is that you have to prepare to your sparrings and fights mentally as much as you do physically. When we all step in the ring, we are afraid, and that's totally fine because that means that your survival instinct works well. But you have to learn to manage those nerves, to reduce them and feel more confident. That's why you have to prepare mentally, and there are a few ways to do that, and I'm gonna share a few of them right now. First of all, you can look back at your previous experience and that will give you confidence. Think about your training, for example. Alright, I didn't skip any workouts, I worked hard, I recovered well, I eat well, I learned outside of the class, that's why I will perform well. So I am confident in myself. Then also you can communicate with your team and coach. That will help you a lot. Also you can seek inspiration, for example, watch motivational videos, and that will give you high spirits and you will fight more fearlessly. So that was our third tip, and the fourth tip is that you have to lift weights like an athlete and not a bodybuilder if you want to perform well in the ring. So a few years ago when my coach left me and I would train solo, I would go to a gym to lift weights. And I would do 4 sets of 8 to 12 reps, and that was ideal for muscle growth. And I gained a few kilograms, I got stronger, but at the same time I got stiffer and slower, and that's not what you want. That's why now I understand that I have to implement strength training, I have to implement plyometrics, isometrics, mobility, and all of that together combined will make me more explosive, stronger, faster and durable. So that's why you have to lift like an athlete and not a bodybuilder. And in the fifth tip I want to talk with you about boxing styles. So I'm kinda tall for my weight class and I'm an out fighter. That's why I keep the distance and I try not to let my opponents get inside. So that's my main strategy. But what I didn't know is that I have to practice my main style but also try to implement features of other styles to be a more versatile fighter, because in one fight I was keeping the guy outside, but when he managed to get close to me I was completely because I didn't know how to infight, how to do clinch work, how to throw body shots, uppercuts, hook when I'm close to the guy. And that's why after that fight I realized that I have to practice my main style most of the time, but also spend some time practicing the other styles, because you never know who you're going to fight and what tactics they will use. That's why you have to be ready for everything. The next tip is to learn some non-basic punches. So we all know about the jab, cross, hooks and uppercuts. Those are the 6 basic punches, but there are many adaptations of them. For example, like ball uppercut, gazelle hook, screw jab, overhands and many more. And once you learn those punches, you will find new attacking angles. So I was sparring and most of the time I used the basic jab. And once I started implementing the screw jab, that's basically when you position your fist like this when you connect instead of this, I started landing more punches because that created a new attacking angle. Because my opponents keep their guard like this, and I was able to strike through their block. And there are so many other punches that you can learn and perform much better in sparring and fights. And the next tip is just the game changer, and it sounds like this. You have to work additional outside of your class to be the best. And imagine this situation. For example, let's take some Joe. Joe goes to a boxing gym and workouts 3 times a week. And then we have Andrei, the guy who goes to the gym with Joe, and he also trains 3 times a week, but in his free time he does tape study, he does strength and conditioning, he does nutrition right, he learns and practices some recovery methods. Guess who will get better results? Of course Andrei, because he puts in more effort. That's why if you want to get the best results, you have to be a boxer 24/7 if you want to be a true champion. And even if you do boxing just for fitness, that will be a good way to improve much faster. And if you struggle with finding a good source of learning outside of a class, I definitely recommend you get the KO Boxing Package, which is a complete training program for boxers. It includes boxing workouts, strength and conditioning plan, practical tips, and a private community with all the members and coaches. Get the KO Boxing Package, first link in the description. The next tip is to try to go to different gyms and work with different coaches to further improve your skills and understanding of boxing. I mean, you don't have to dump your current boxing gym and forget about your coach. Of course, be loyal to him because that's where you started, but be open at the same time to collaborating with other guys. Once you try to work with other coaches, you will find new training methods, new sparring partners, you will get new knowledge, new tips, and new look at your own skills. For example, I've been working with my coach Sergey Sholom since I'm a kid, but I also had a chance to work with 4 other coaches, and they taught me a lot of different stuff. That's why I am a more complete fighter, and that improves my knowledge and my skills. The next tip is super important, and that is that you have to recover as hard as you train. So don't be David Goggins in training and don't push through pain, and you better listen to your body and be mindful about that. Let's take me for example. I got some shoulder injury in January. That was slight. I just decreased the load and the pain went away in a week. Then I didn't make any conclusions and moved further. In April it came back to me. And that time the pain was harder, so I did some mobility exercises. It lasted like for 2 weeks and the pain went away. Once again I didn't make any conclusions, and then in the summer it came back again to me and I decided just to push through pain and
be the real man.
And that was the worst idea ever because I injured it very bad. And now I'm just a guy who stopped doing boxing 2 months ago, and I also will not do it to the end of the year. So you have to recover well, do some stretching, do some mobility, do some cool down, don't forget to do your warm-up, do some cold plunges, do sauna, go to massages, and that will keep you safe and you will feel much better and you will be thankful to yourself. So the next tip is that you have to understand that everything in boxing is very situational. That's why it's alright to sometimes make mistakes. For example, when we are getting started in boxing, we are taught to follow the fundamentals all the time. But when you take a look at professionals, you can see them making mistakes almost in every aspect of their game. But that's totally fine, because there are some situations when you can make a mistake to get some additional efficiency. For example, I can drop my non-punching hand and generate more power to finish my opponent right here and there. And to do that, you have to understand the game really well, because there are some situations when you can make that mistake and there are situations when you should avoid that. For example, keyboard warriors just love to critique other boxers. For example, someone drops his hand while practicing power jabs, but when you see Canelo doing that, he does that mistake all the time, but he hardly ever gets dropped, because he knows when to do that to generate power and hit his opponent harder, and he knows when to keep his hand up and be more protected. So he understands the game and he makes his boxing very effective. And I am sure that you're not one of those keyboard hater warriors, and if you like this video and find it helpful, please leave a like, be subscribed, and hit that notification bell to stay tuned. And we're moving further. The next tip is to learn some basic anatomy, to know where to hit and what that will cause. It may seem obvious, of course, you have to hit the jaw, you have to go to their liver, but that's not as simple as that. For example, when I was sparring as a beginner, I was just aiming for the head and I didn't care where my punches landed as far as I felt the impact and I saw their head snap back. But I was throwing punches at the forehead and that actually dealt a lot of damage to my hands too. That's why you have to be precise and know where to hit. For example, aim for the nose, for the jaw, for the temple, to the ribs. You can target the spleen, you can target the solar plexus, the liver, and you also have to understand what effect that will cause. For example, body shots will slow down your opponent and stop him from applying pressure. Headshots will of course deal him some brain damage, and for example, a hit to the nose will give him hard time to breathe, and that will also slow him down and distract him. That's why you have to understand that game. You also may target their hands to make them throw punches less. That's why think about that and learn basic human anatomy as a boxer. The next tip is that you have to train with people who are better than you to really grow. And there is the saying, if you're the smartest person in the room, you are in the wrong room. The same applies to boxing gyms. So whenever you're in training, don't pair up with weaker guys just to satisfy your ego, and you better find someone with higher level than you and learn from him. And then, of course, this way you will progress much faster. But I don't say to ignore beginners. When they ask you to help them, don't be ignorant and help them. And the next tip is to learn body language and emotions of your opponents and adjust your tactics based on that. Emotional aspect of boxing is very neglected and you can take advantage of that. For example, you fight a very calm guy and you may get him angry, so to push him for making mistakes and then counter him. For example, you can do some trash talk, you can show off in front of him, you can do some little dirty tricks and that will piss him off, he will go into you and you will be able to find openings. Another example, imagine you're fighting a guy with very uplifted spirit and you know that his main specialty is infighting. So you may want to go let him inside and then just clinch him there, just do some hugging and then let the ref break you apart. And you will do that over and over again, and the guy will get frustrated because you will take out his main weapon and he will try to change his tactics, and then you will be able to capitalize on that because now he doesn't have his main weapon and you can beat him. And if you found this video helpful, I definitely recommend you check out this one right here where I share practical tips for sparrings. Thanks for watching and stay sharp.